All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started. Thank you for those of you who have joined us. My name is Ryan Desmond. I'm a co-founder of CodingNomads and an instructor, and I'm very pleased to have Austin Riba join us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, depending on where you are in the world. Austin and I have known each other for over a decade. We went to school together back in Oregon University, Southern Oregon University, many years ago, and we were in the computer science department together, and we've been able to work together at a number of companies and on a number of projects ever since. And we're very thrilled to have Austin as an instructor for one of our upcoming Python courses. So today we're going to have Austin with us, and we're just going to chat a little bit, ask him some questions, and he's going to show us basically how to build an Instagram-like web app in 30 to 45 minutes. We'll see how it goes. So thanks for joining us, Austin.
Thank you, Ryan. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So I'm going to share my screen here. We're going to pull up a couple little slides just to get the party started. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm Ryan Desmond. We're here with Austin Riba, and this is how to build a photo sharing web app using Python, Django, JavaScript, and more in 30 to 45 minutes. If any of you along the way have some questions, feel free to pass them, to share them with us in the chat box. And once we're done with the presentation, we'll go through there and we'll answer all your questions. So a few things that this training will teach you. One is how to use the command line interface to set up and work with your project really quickly. Several of the developer tools you already have in your browser. And at the end, we'll push our application up to GitHub to add to our portfolios, because the stronger GitHub you have with more projects that show more of your skills and more technologies that you know and your versatility, the better. And Austin is a GitHub example that I use all the time with our students, because he's been pushing to GitHub regularly for many years. So he's got a stellar GitHub. We'll share a link to his GitHub after the presentation. If you can make your GitHub look like Austin's, you're in good shape. I'll go ahead and introduce you, Austin. Austin is a full stack developer in Python and JavaScript. He also knows a number of other languages. We used to work together for two or three different companies using Java. He moved over to Python. He's been working for Las Cumbres National Observatory for the last several years. And he is now making his way back into the freelance world and working as an instructor for CodingNomads, which we're thrilled about. Austin has been a software engineer for over 10 years, and he's one of those lucky guys that is able to just about take his job just about anywhere, and has worked as a digital nomad on and off throughout his career. Austin's also an avid bike rider out in the mountains, as you can see here. My name's Ryan. As I mentioned, I'm a co-founder at CodingNomads. I've been a software engineer about the same exact amount of time as Austin, as we went to university together. We started CodingNomads about 4 years ago. We teach software engineering courses online and around the world in both Java and Python. So, Austin, I'll let you take over here if you don't mind. So why learn Python? Why should, if somebody's considering, they're getting started learning programming, what are some of the reasons you would recommend that they learn Python?
Yeah, so Python is a really great first language to learn. And one of the main reasons for that is because it has a really simple, easy to understand syntax. So a lot of people, when they think programming or they see code, they see all sorts of like strange characters and curly braces and semicolons and stuff all over the place. Python reads a lot like English. So it's a lot like what we call pseudocode that actually runs. And that's one of the main reasons why people love learning Python. And then also it's super versatile. So once you do learn it, it's applicable in almost every area, very big in the math and sciences. And as we'll see soon, it's also very popular for web development.
Nice. So a few, we can't go on a webinar here at CodingNomads without kind of shouting out some of our street cred. We've been very fortunate to work with over 100 students, both in person and online. And if you go to switchup.org/CodingNomads, etc., you can see some of that street cred. We've had students from over 30 countries, and as of yet, the results and the outcomes of them taking courses with us have been very positive. So here's just a few reviews. Overall, the program above my expectation. Thank you, Kaushik. Natalie joined us in the online program. We worked together for several months, and she made a ton of progress learning Java, object-oriented programming, and so on. So, got to throw out a little street cred there. This picture here on the right is our co-working space where we run our courses in Bali. So in the afternoons when you're working on labs, you can step upstairs on the outside terrace and look out over the jungle to work. It's quite nice. So without further ado, Austin, I'm going to hand the screen over to you. and we can just jump in and start looking at how to build a photo share web app with Python, Django, JavaScript, and more. You ready?
Give me 1 second here.
Sure.
Sorry, the Zoom app will not be able to record the contents of your screen until it's quit, so I will be right back.
Sure. Go ahead and drop. I will. I'll continue talking about the great things about Python while you're gone. So one of the wonderful things about Python these days is that it's just used absolutely everywhere. So the applications and industries that you can use Python in really spans the gamut. One of the most common questions that we get from people who are thinking about learning Python is, what can I use Python for? And the answer is really just about everything. So every industry, whether it be science, technology, aeronautics, food, retail, just about everything. If they need software, Python is going to be a good answer for that. It's extremely popular, and the market share basically of the number of companies that are using Python these days is just going up and up and up and up and up. So basically, with the advent of machine learning, data science, AI, and all that kind of stuff, which Python is kind of the de facto go-to language for that. As all those industries and all those technologies become more and more popular and more interesting, Python just becomes more and more popular. So it's been great. Python's basically having a renaissance these days. So welcome back, Austin. How's it look now?
Thank you. Let's give it another try. Okay. So just to pick up where Ryan left off, I just have a couple examples of what makes Python so popular in certain areas. So I think he had mentioned machine learning and AI, and one of the really well-known packages for that in Python is called TensorFlow. And if you spend any time researching this kind of stuff, you will become familiar with this software package. One of the main ways people are writing AI stuff now. It's also very big in the sciences. So the job before that I worked at last was, as Ryan mentioned, an astronomical observatory. And there we made a large use of Python, especially with a package called SciPy that includes NumPy. And these are some of the de facto packages for working in Python and the sciences. Again, tons of contributors, very popular. But what we'll be focusing on today is this package called Django. It's a web framework, so you can build websites using Python. Again, it's very popular, and it makes it very easy and quick to prototype and put into production web applications. So I know you guys are here to watch code get written, so we can start right away. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new repository in GitHub. It's always a great first step when you're starting a project. So we're going to call our, well, first of all, let me describe what we're going to build. We're going to build a web application that kind of mimics like a photo sharing application or a blog, sort of like Instagram, where we can upload photos and share them with our friends and all that fun stuff. So we're going to call this project Pygram. Let's make it public. Open source is always good. And we want to initialize it with the README so we can check it out immediately. We are making a Python project, so we'll add the correct git ignore. And because we're good internet citizens, we'll make our code under the GPL. Okay, so here we are as our new project. GitHub gives us this handy way to immediately clone it. So I'm going to check out a new project in a new directory here. If this text isn't big enough, someone just let me know.
Looks good over here. Quick question for you. What operating system are you on, and what terminal program is this?
So this is iTerm 2 running on OS 10.
Nice. Okay, cool. iTerm is just it's another terminal client. So all of our computers come with either a built-in terminal if you're on a Mac, or a Linux machine, or the command prompt if you're on Windows. And iTerm is a terminal program that you can download, which just has a bit more extended functionality than the traditional terminal.
Exactly right. Thanks, Ryan. So as you can see, I've checked out the project that we just created in GitHub. And since this is a Python project, I'm going to want to create a new virtual env for it. And what a virtual env is, you'll learn more if you decide to take the course, but it is a way to kind of bundle all of the libraries and dependencies that your project depends on into one place where they're available so that they don't mess up with like your system files. So we're going to create a new virtual env.
Just another question for you there. So
sure.
A virtual environment is basically like an environment where you'll put all of basically where you'll configure for this application to run. But it's like a virtual environment in your machine. So you can set up things like system variables, environment variables, etc., that your program will need, but you're not setting them up at a system-wide level, right? You're just setting them in this virtual environment. Is that a correct way to think about it?
Yeah, that's correct. So when I run Python programs, these programs that are running in this environment will have access to everything that I've installed in this environment, and they won't mess up anything outside of it.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so now I'm in this environment. I can actually prove it by using this Unix command which tells you where a program is located. So if I do Python 3, which Python 3, you'll see that it's actually in my documents folder here. So I'm running this program. Most Python programs have some dependencies. So we're going to set up a requirements.txt file that'll list them for us. And inside here, we're going to need Django because that's a web framework we're using. And we're also going to need Pillow, which is a Python imaging library because our web application is going to work with images. So just in case you're curious, this is a text editor on the right side of the screen. It's Vim. Really great, powerful text editor. Runs in your terminal. So I thought it would probably make this presentation a little easier instead of having to switch windows all the time. So that's what I'm using in case you're curious. Okay, so we have our requirements.txt set up. Now that we have that, we can actually install the dependencies. So we're going to do that using pip.
And Python is really great with this requirements.txt because as we build more complex software applications, right, we depend on a lot of external dependencies. For instance, the web framework Django and the imaging library Pillow. And with Python, it makes it incredibly simple because you just have this file called requirements.txt, and that file's a part of your program, right? And now anyone who clones this program, for instance, you watching this, if at a later date, if you clone this program, you can run the same command that Austin just ran, pip install-r requirements.txt, and it will pull down all the requirements for this project into your virtual machine. So it makes it really, really simple to basically set up the environment.
That's correct. Okay, so we've downloaded Django now, as well as Pillow. But the important part is we have Django, so there's a couple new commands available to us. The first one we're going to use is the Django admin command. And that's actually going to let us bootstrap a new Django project called Pygram here, this argument, in the current directory. So when I run that, I'll see that a bunch of files just appeared. So before we only had requirements.txt and the virtual environment. Now we have, and the README and license, and now we have this managed py file and another directory called Pygram. So now that the Django project is bootstrapped, we can actually run it. And I'm also running it somewhere else, my bad. So if I copy this link, open up my web browser, paste it in there with the port, we'll see we get this, congratulations, you're running Django screen. So if I reload this page a couple times, you should see that the logs in my terminal here are showing that, yes, I am running Django from this project. So I'm going to leave that running and create a new terminal that we can work in here.
I'm going to just add one little detail there in case anyone's confused what just happened with the web browser. Basically, since Django is a web framework, as soon as Austin starts running the local Django server, it launches the application in a sustained way where it continues to run on port 8000 of the computer. And so when you go through a web browser, you can go to 127.0.0.1:8000, which basically says 127.0.0.1 is the IP address of this computer. And it's always on your computer, it's the same, on my computer, it's the same. It's always that IP address. And then :8000 basically says, I want to go talk to whatever application is running on port 8000, which in this case is Django. So it's basically like he's running a local web server on his machine, and he's able to access it through his web browser at that IP address.
Now that we have a project set up, we actually want to start writing the code or the business logic that applies to what we're trying to achieve, which is an Instagram-like application. So Django has this concept of applications. So you kind of can separate the logic for different parts of your application into different bundles. So for an Instagram-like app, or web application, you could have an app for posts. You could have an app for maybe a site-wide blog. And you can also download different apps that give your application different functionality from the internet. Well, we're not going to do that right now, but what we will do is create an app called Posts that'll house all of the business logic for creating and commenting on Instagram posts. So you can see here that we now have a new folder in our project. There's a couple different files in there. The one that we are concerned with right now is the models py. So we're going to take a look at that real quick. So what is a model? You might hear this term used not only in just in Django, but in a lot of different development contexts. And what the model is a representation of data in your application that you can act on. So we're trying to model posting images to a website. We're thinking of them as posts, and we want to think about the attributes and actions that we can take on those models. And this exercise is called data modeling. If you take the course, you're going to learn a lot more about it. But for now, we'll just go for it. So we're going to create a new class called post. And now we have to think about the things that are going to belong to a post. So the first thing that we really obviously think about is an image. So every post is going to have an image. So to represent that, we say image equals an image field. Now, another thing that our pygram posts are going to have is a description, like some kind of text. So to model that, we say a text field. Now, another thing that these posts are going to have is an author. So when someone makes a post, we have to link it back to who made it somehow. So to do that, we're going to use what's called a foreign key to a user. And then this on delete thing, basically what this is saying is that when the user is deleted, what should we do with the post? And we're just going to say cascade the operation, which means when we delete a user, all of their posts are going to get deleted too.
That's very nice of you. I doubt that Instagram really does that, but I appreciate that you do.
Now, this user model is the same kind of thing that we're defining here with our post model, except that it's something that comes with Django. So you'll see that I imported it from django.contrib.auth up here. So that's really nice. A nice thing that Django provides for us is a built-in user model, so we don't have to do it ourselves. Another nice thing that I always recommend everyone always adds to their models is just created modified timestamps. Don't necessarily have to use them or display them to your users in the app, but they're almost always handy to have around. So we're going to add a couple of these. This is just saying that every time we create a post, we're going to populate the created column with the current date time.
And will this propagate to the database, basically?
Yes. So You can think of each one of these fields here as a column in a table, and this class as being a table. So the other thing that we want to be able to do in this app is comment on posts. So we'll create another model for that. Now, of course, a comment belongs to a post, so we're going to use another foreign key. And this one is going to go to the post model that we just created. Same thing with onDelete. And a comment has some text. We'll make another text field. And then again, comment has an author. So why don't we just copy and paste this? And the created and modified timestamps again. Okay, so we've kind of defined our database structure now. It's not super complicated. So we're going to go with that. Now, another thing that Django comes with that's really nice is a migration system. So basically, it'll automatically create our database for us and change it over time if we need to change it. So to do that, we are going to use our manage.py command to run migrations. Well, first we're going to make migrations. Oh, shoot. Sorry. When we created this app, the post app, we actually have to tell our main Django application that we did and that and how to install it. So we're just going to go to our settings.py file here. This has all of the settings that are applicable to our Django application. Many of them are obviously defaulted, but you can see here installed apps. We need to add ours. Now this is just some kind of magic, but when you start learning Django, it'll all become more clear. Another thing that I'm going to do while I'm here is set allowed to be anything, because I want to be able to share this with you guys later, this application when it's running. And I'm going to do a little bit some more housekeeping down here. I have to tell Django where to serve the images that we'll be uploading from. Okay, so let's go back to our models. We'll tell Django to make some migrations. You can see here that it created this new file, this initial.py, and it tells us what it's going to do. It's going to create the post model and the comment model. Now that we've made the migrations, we can migrate. And you'll see that our post migration ran here, and there's all sorts of other stuff that also got ran. And that's because, like I mentioned before, Django comes with the user model and some other stuff. And whenever, so we need to create those tables to store that data. And then whenever Django itself releases an update, they'll put these internal migrations in there so that you can cleanly update your underlying application.
Question for you, Austin. What?
Sure.
So now, is there are the database tables created?
Yes.
And what database are you using?
So by default, we use SQL Light 3. So you can see there's this this SQL Light 3 database right here. In fact, we can open it.
Okay.
And you can see if I tell SQLite what tables it has, here are posts and comments.
Got it. And then SQLite is basically an in-memory database, really good for prototyping. Do people use SQLite for kind of more advanced kind of production applications, or is it more for development and testing, prototyping?
Yeah, traditionally it's mainly used for development and testing. But there are cases where you would like to use it in production. Okay. For example, if your entire data set fits in memory anyways,
right,
then it can be a good choice.
Okay.
Okay, so we've migrated our database. We have our database, so we have a place to store all of the information. And as we mentioned before, we have a built-in user model. So maybe one thing that we should do now is actually create a user so that we can log into our app and start doing stuff. So I'm just going to create a super user using the command line here. Austin, here's my email address. I'm going to use CodingNomads as the password. So we've created a user in our database. Now, we actually do have already the ability to create posts and comments using a really nice feature of Django called the admin site. So I'm going to show you that now. I've just opened this admin.py file, and I'm going to register. I believe this is correct. Well, first let's import our posts. Let me cheat real quick. This doesn't really make much sense, but let me show you what I'm talking about. So our app is still running. If we go to admin, we can log in with the user I just created. And you'll see here we have the ability to, for example, list users and create new users, but we also have posts. So right away, we can go in, I can select an image, give it a description, say who the author is, and save it. Now that post object was just saved to our database. Should be able to go in. I need to restart the server here and view this post and modify and update it. Which reminds me, I need to do one more quick housekeeping item. Which is to tell admin, tell Django that we want to be able to serve the images that we're uploading. So now let's see if we can view that image. There we are. Okay, that'll be important later. Okay, so we're off to a good start, but we don't have much of anything that we can actually show to the people using our app. It's all cool that we can create posts in the back end, but not very helpful for anybody else. So let's get started with that. The first thing we're going to do is create what's called a view. And a view is what it sounds like. It's a view into our data. Django has these really awesome generic views, which kind of take care of a lot of the kind of boilerplate you would normally have to write with other web frameworks, and just kind of does it for you. So we're going to first just create our front page, which is going to list all of the posts in our app. So we're going to import this list view class, and then we're going to create our own that inherits from that. Now, if you're not super familiar with object-oriented programming, what we're doing here is we're importing a class that has a bunch of functionality, and then we're creating our own class that inherits it from it. So now that we have this class post list that inherits from list view, our post list class has all of the attributes and methods that the list view built-in class has. All we need to do is tell it which model we want to list. So let's import our post model. And just tell this that we want to list posts. Okay, now that we have our view, we need to tell Django which URL we want to serve it on. So here we'll just say the front page, we need to import our view. Okay. So this is the URLs file, which kind of lists all of the paths. So when you go to a website, there's different kind of URLs you can go to, and this is the one that lists all that and what to do when the user goes to that. So basically what we're saying is when the user just goes to the home path where there's nothing after the domain name, we'll run this view. So we can see what happens when we do that. So before we used to have that great Django starting page. Now we just have an error saying that a template doesn't exist. Now that makes sense because we haven't actually written any HTML or anything yet. So we'll want to do that now. So let's create a new directory to house our templates underneath our posts. Underneath our posts application. And then we will create a new, well, we can look at what the file name that Django wants us to have. It's called postlist.html. So I'll create a new file with that. And then I'm going to cheat a little bit here and copy and paste from what I did earlier, just so you don't have to wait for me to type it. But I'll explain it. So basically here we have just some basic HTML. It should look familiar if you've worked in it before. But in the body here, we have this funny looking template syntax here. And basically what this is saying is for every post in the object list that gets passed into this template, we're going to loop over them and show some information about them. So here we have the username and the URL to the image, which will actually display on the page, and some other information. So
is this, quick question, is this a specific templating engine, or is this just kind of part of the Django framework?
So yeah, Django comes with its own templating engine, but you can use, for example, Jinja if you want. You can swap it out.
Got it.
Jinja actually is based on the Django template, which came first. Okay. Keen observers will notice that I restarted the dev server there, which you don't have to do often, but sometimes when you create like entirely new directories, you do have to do that. So just something to keep in mind. Something's not working, you can always restart the dev server. So you can see here, we have that post that I just created. And actually, just to prove that it's working, we should probably create another one with a different image. There's an image of my lovely wife being a coding nomad at the library. Now, if we go back and reload the home page, we'll see it there.
Nice.
Okay, so one thing you'll probably notice is that it's pretty ugly. Now, there's some quick things that we can do just to make this look a little bit better. So we're going to do that now. And this is also going to introduce the concept of template inheritance. So we're going to have a couple different pages in this app, but we don't want to have to keep copying and pasting like the HTML on the head part of our pages every single time. So I'm actually going to create a new file. I'm just going to call it base.html. And in this base file, I'm going to copy and paste in some more HTML. And this kind of includes like some basic styling. It has like a header, but the important part you'll see here is this block content. Now, what this is saying is that any template that inherits from this base template, if it includes a block called content, that content will go inside of here. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. So in our posts list here, we can actually just get rid of all this stuff and replace it with and then say, this is the content block. Get rid of that. Okay, see how it looks now. All right, still doesn't look great, but it's workable. And I hope you'd agree. So we'll stick with that for now. Now you'll notice that we're able to list posts, but so far there's been no way to actually create them for normal users that don't have access to the admin page. So we're going to go ahead and get started on that. So to create a post, you're going to, to create a post, you're going to need another view. So we'll go back to our views file. And again, Django provides us with a nice generic one that we can use to create posts. So we'll do import that. So again, we're going to need to tell it which model we want to create. Now this view is a little bit more complicated because we're not just listing things, we're creating things. So one of the other attributes that we have to give a create view is the fields that we want to include in the form that we'll use to create posts. So obviously we want to be able to upload an image. We want to be able to set a description, and we want to be able to say who it was that uploaded or that created this post. And then another thing that we need to provide is the success URL, which is basically what do we do once we've actually created a post? What happens then? And or where does the user get sent? And I think there we're just going to send it back to the home page. So we'll just leave it like that for now. Now that we created a new view, we need to go back to our URLs and tell Django where the user has to go in order to create a new post. So here we'll use new. Seems reasonable. We'll import our new view that we created. Is that what I called it? Post create, yep. Tell Django that we want to execute that when we go to the new URL. And we'll just call this new. Okay. So what happens now if we go to new? Oops. So we'll see that I got an error, unknown fields user specified for post. That would make sense because if we look at our models, I didn't call the field on a post user. I didn't call it a user, I call it author. So Django got confused there. So let's change this to author. Reload the page. And another error, and this one looks familiar. It's the same template does not exist error that we got from trying to load the page when we didn't write any HTML. So we do need to create our HTML for creating posts. So let's do that now. And it wants it to be called postform.html. So we are going to, again, extend that base HTML so we get the nice header and the CSS from before. fill in the content block. Then we'll just add some HTML here that's like create new post. And then we need to create the form. So here we're going to use a Django tag that allows us to kind of generically or dynamically generate URLs from the urls.py file. You'll remember that we gave our URL a name, so I'm just going to use that here. So this is basically just going to be replaced with the actual URL when the template renders. This is going to be a post method, a post form. And since we're working with images, we have to give it this multi-part form data encoding type. Okay, so that should be it for our form. The CSRF token is a security feature that Django provides us that CSRF stands for cross-site request forgery. Basically, this puts like a little cookie on your browser, so when you submit the form, Django can know that the request actually came from you and not someone in the middle. And then finally, we'll render the form itself. And create a button to submit the form. And finish our content block. Okay. Now I'll go back here. I messed this up. All right. So now we'll see if we go to /new on our application that we get this very lovely form. But basically, I should be able to do the same thing we did from the admin. Give a description. Now this is a little cheesy. You might notice that I'm actually going to select who the author of this post is, even though I'm logged in as Austin. And I promise we can fix that later. So hit post, and then you'll see there's a photo from Crater Lake and the description that I gave it. So we just created a new post in our database.
It's pretty amazing how quickly you're able to pull this together. It's nice work.
It is. It's thanks to Django and all the people that have worked hard over the years. How are we doing on time, Ryan?
We're good. I think I'm sure the people who are with us would like to see this thing through. Technically, we've got about 10 minutes, but feel free to push it over a little bit. I'm definitely interested, so keep on going.
Okay. So I'm just going to put a link to create a new post on the front page so that we can actually get there. So I should be able to do that. All right, so now we get to the hard part, which is actually adding comments to stuff. So you might see me copying and pasting a little bit more than I did in the beginning, but that's due to time restraints. So, but yeah, we want to be able to view a post and actually be able to add comments to it. So let's get started with that.
One thing I'll note too for the people who are with us live right now that we'll absolutely open this up for comments and questions after Austin's done with this presentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the chat box and we'll get to them just a little bit.
So we're going to create, again, another view that's just a detail view. So it's a view of a single post. So if all we wanted to, well, if all we wanted to do was just view a single post, that would be sufficient, but we actually want to be able to submit a comment from that view. So we're going to add a couple of other things. We're going to create a form to be able to comment on a post. And we're just going to say that this form has one field. It's a char field, character field, for the text of the comment. And then in our detail view here, we are going to say that we want to add that form to the data that gets sent to the template. Oops. So that's object-oriented programming working for us. So again, we'll go back to our URLs. We're going to do something a little bit different this time for our detail view. We are going to need a path parameter. So we're going to say when someone navigates to posts, and then the PK, which is short for primary key, then we want to run the post detail view.
When you say path variable, that basically means like in the URL, I'm gonna, 127.0.0.1/post/4 or something like that will be the URL.
Exactly. So I'll demonstrate that now. So we'll go to post/1, which is, what did I do here? So you'll see here, we added 1, which is the primary key for the first post that we created. And we're getting the familiar error that the template doesn't exist. We need to create post detail. So let's do that. So as before, I'm just going to plop it in this time. And again, we extend the base, we add comment, we implement the content block. We're going to display the same kind of information for a post that we do on the list view, except we're only going to display 1. And then underneath that information and the image, we're going to list out all of the comments for that post. And then underneath that list of comments, we're going to actually create another form where we can post a comment. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so here's our first post is this one that I created. It's me and Ben. So it's post/1. And you can see that we have a very basic comment form down here. Now we have to tell Django what happens when I actually click this button. So again, I'm going to just copy and paste this in and explain it. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do, since we're working with the comment model now, is import it. I'm also going to import a couple utility functions from Django. And then I'll explain what this method is doing. So if you notice the action of, or the method of this form is post. Now, if we look at our view, we're implementing the post method on this view. And we're telling Django, like, when a post happens at this URL, what are we going to do? Well, the first thing is we're going to instantiate the form that we created up here with the data from the form that the user posted. And then if that form is valid, we're going to create a new comment model. And we're going to say the author is the person that made the request. The post is the post from the page that the form was on. That's what self.getObject does. And then the text is actually the text from the data that was sent in the form. And then we'll save it. And if something bad happens, we'll raise an exception. This is really bad error handling, but it'll work for us for now. And then finally, we'll redirect the user back to that same detail page so they can see the comment that they just posted. Now, I think this should work. So let's give it a try. Okay, so I wrote in good ride, and now you can see that I commented how that was a good ride. So Ryan, I think this is probably a good place to stop. I was actually going to create a user for you, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Same password, CodingNomads, and then I'm going to open this up for you or anyone else to actually log in and play around in this web app. So I'm going to paste this URL into the chat real quick. If I can figure out how to do that. Here we are. So Ryan, why don't you log into that, then go to /admin.
I'm clicking the link.
/admin.
I'm going to /admin.
Mm-hmm. Then log in with Ryan and CodingNomads.
Oh, it's just Ryan, not Ryan at.
Yeah, it's just Ryan.
CodingNomads all lowercase.
Yep.
Got it. I'm in.
Okay, so then go to just /new. So after the port, just do /new. And you should be able to create a post. And let me know when you're done. Ryan is frantically trying to find an image that's safe for work on his computer.
All right, I think I did it.
All right, look at that. So I just reloaded the page. And from all the way from Bali, Ryan was able to post this lovely picture of what looks like a cohort at CodingNomads in Bali.
That's pretty sweet.
So yeah.
So just out of curiosity, how did you open up your, I saw you ran an ngrok command. So would you mind briefly explaining how you did that?
Yeah, so ngrok is a service that allows you to tunnel your local, whatever's running on your local machine, kind of like through ngrok service so that other people can access it. So what's happening when you go to that URL is ngrok is like, oh, you know, they requested this specific URL that's tied to Austin's machine, and it'll route the traffic to me instead.
Interesting. And so what was the actual command that you ran there?
It was ngrok. Let me see. Let's just do this. I can see that someone's clicking around, so I don't want to. Yeah, it's just ngrok HTTP, and then the port of your local machine, or or your local the port of your local application, and then right. HTTP obviously is 80, so that the URL goes to the right place.
And then did it come up with that C5CD43AB URL?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I think there's a command where you can tell it which subdomain you want, but I just checked this out. I just found this today.
Very, very cool. Well, thank you, Austin. I'm gonna, if you want, we can, any other things that you wanted to demonstrate for us here on your computer?
No, I think that's it. You know, I think if we had more time, like, we could get into JavaScript and stuff like that, but I think this is a good place to stop.
Yeah. So real quick before we go, can we also push this project up to GitHub, Austin?
Sure. So my terminal here, I'm just going to check the status of my Git repo and see that, yeah, we've edited a lot of stuff and we should probably add it. Check again. We'll see all these new files that we created. And let's make a commit. Initial, very ugly Insta clone. Okay,
Nice.
made a commit. Now we'll push it up to GitHub.
Sweet. And then do you mind, we'll share the link with everyone to this GitHub repo. Do you mind creating just a quick README and adding it too, so that for people when they clone it, maybe just a quick 1, 2, 3 on how they can run this on their machine, if that's possible?
Sure, no problem.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and you can stop sharing your screen here. We can potentially see. Anybody have any questions there? Oh, I see that we've got Sean Mayo. You've also got your video on. Welcome. There.
Hi.
So any questions that I can, would anybody, Austin just shared a bunch of information there. So I'm sure for many of you that's a bit overwhelming, but the idea here for this tutorial was just to show you how quickly you can really pull together a pretty functional and effective web application using Python and Django. And obviously, if we spent a little more time with some CSS and JavaScript, that would, we could pretty that thing up. But typically speaking, as server-side developers and that go on towards a little bit of full stack and front end, we're more interested in how it all works than how it all looks. But Austin, I think you did a really great job of pulling that together. So thank you very much. Any other closing thoughts, Austin, on kind of as people are getting started, other than coming to Coding Nomads courses, obviously, which is always a great idea for someone who's looking to code. If you were talking to a friend who's interested in learning Python and kind of just getting started in the software development field, any recommendations for kind of things they should do, areas they should start, websites they should look at, et cetera, to kind of get started, obviously besides Coding Nomads?
Yeah, so going to a boot camp is probably one of the more effective ways to learn. But if you're just trying to decide whether or not you enjoy coding, there's plenty of websites out there like Code Katas and Code Challenge websites that you can go and just write like small amounts of code to solve very simple problems, and it'll give you a taste for whether or not you actually enjoy coding. And then another thing is just read every day for hours, documentation, blogs about what you're interested in, because there's so much information, especially when you're starting out, that the more you can absorb, the better.
Right. Well, I can say it's been a pleasure to learn from you, Austin. I'm thrilled to be your assistant in an upcoming in-person course for Coding Nomads. Another thing that I'll mention here, and I'll go over towards our presentation here. I think, let's see, I'll share my screen just to kind of close it out. So now we've learned, that took about 50 minutes or so, but I would say how to build a photo sharing web app using Python and Django, HTML and CSS. We didn't quite get to JavaScript, but if you're interested, definitely reach out. We can definitely take you there. Austin did a fantastic job. If you're interested in learning more beyond the resources that Austin mentioned, and I would really back that up. There's so many free resources online for those of you who are getting started. And we really recommend, before people even come to a course like ours, that they spend a lot of time doing a self-study, going through the free resources, working their way through the free tutorials, and as well as those that we have on our online learning platform, which is platform.codingnomads.co. People are welcome to create a free account. We've got several free courses on there. We've got new material coming on there by the day, as well as several courses in Java programming, Python programming. And we're very excited to announce that we've got programs in data science and machine learning, Python with Django, Python with Flask, Python for finance and investing. We've got a Go programming course that's coming together. Lots of activity and courses being created on our online learning platform, which is really exciting. And again, this is open to the public. You do need to create an account, but it's free. And we have all kinds of free courses and in-depth courses on there as well. So feel free to check that out. Just a little more detail, like for instance, on our Python course, we have over 500 pages of documentation, 300 fully functional code samples, hundreds of custom made videos, And everybody who signs up actually purchases any Coding Nomads online courses. They also get lifetime access to our members only forum, which is where all of us students, mentors, and instructors just kind of chat, help each other out. It's super useful. A little word about the graduates of our Coding Nomads programs. We've had students from over 30 countries around the world that come from all kinds of backgrounds, right? We've got people who are fresh out of high school or taking a break from university, all the way up to people who are in their 40s and 50s who are interested in upgrading their tech skill set and looking for kind of new challenges. So graduates of our programs have become junior developers, data engineers, data analysts. We've got several people who have started their own startups, product managers, and people who get promoted in their current careers, make lateral moves in current companies that they're already in. Generally speaking, learning to code in today's world is just a really strong, solid skill that can help you with your career, work on really interesting projects. For instance, Austin and I have worked on so many projects in our careers. Back in the beginning, we worked on a project that where we built a bike that basically we took a generator and we turned it into we took a motor, we turned it around, we turned it into a generator that was powered by a bike, and put very small amounts of electricity back on the grid. And then we built all this software to monitor the exact amount of electricity the bike was creating, and a website. People had fobs so that they could log into the bike. It was a very fun project back in university. And since then, we've also worked on building sustainability software for a number of companies in San Francisco. We worked on a project for a company that built one of the largest renewable energy monitoring grids in the world. We've also worked on trying to create a brand new type of search engine. Austin now has been working for this amazing international observatory, creating a network of interconnected telescopes around the world to keep an eye in the sky 24 hours a day, which is just fascinating. So code might seem a little dense and weird or boring at first, but once you know how to do it, it really opens up your opportunities to work on these really fascinating projects in whatever industry you are interested in. And just as a small sampling of where some of our students work: Adobe, Facebook, Uber, Apogee, University of Texas, Phillips. We've got alumni at Yale. It's been a great run, and we've been able to work with some wonderful students. And so if you're interested, definitely feel free to reach out. We'd love to talk to you, if only just to help you figure out what it is that you might like to learn, what direction you might like to go, etc. So thank you for joining. I'll check one more time, make sure that we don't have any comments that popped up or questions. Let's see. And a Django course in the making. Absolutely right, Martin. So thank you all again. Thank you, Austin. I really appreciate your time. Fantastic work. I'm really excited to learn more from you, and have a nice day.
Yeah, I can't wait to share some more.
So cool. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.